Hey, it's me, Tommy. So today we're here to test two similarly priced gimbals that are getting really popular with YouTubers and filmmakers these days, especially in the mirrorless camera market. We've got the DJI Ronin S and the Moza Air 2. Let's get to comparing. The main thing I personally use a gimbal for is B-roll, trying to take some nice, interesting product shots of things that I review on my channel. That might not be your use case. You might want to use a gimbal for other stuff. That's fine. I'm gonna try and review it as objectively as possible. I'm gonna do shots outside, chasing my kid around. I'm also gonna show you what I use it for, which is like the B-roll stuff. For any footage I take with either of these gimbals, I'm gonna be using the X-T3 because it has no in-body image stabilization, and I'm using the 16 to 55mm f2.8, which is not a stabilized lens. So any of the smoothness that you see coming out of this camera is gonna be from the gimbals themselves. Now what I think is really interesting is even though the DJI Ronin S, you can separate the handle from the top and it's a lot more easy to pack into a small backpack. If you intend on using the travel cases that come with them, the Moza Air 2's case is half the size of the DJI Ronin S's. So DJI Ronin S packs down smaller, but the Moza Air 2 travels easier. Isn't that weird? The grip of the Moza Air 2 is like a smooth, plasticky feeling. But the grip on the DJI Ronin S is a much more substantial and rubberized feeling grip. So if you're just to quickly grab it and go, the Ronin S is much more comfortable in the hands. So point to Ronin for that. Now if you're trying to carry some heavy cameras, the Moza Air 2 does have stronger motors and it can carry slightly more weight. Now I've never come close to capping out the weight limit of either of these gimbals, but the Moza Air 2 is a better choice for heavy setups. So after you open the package and you want to get started with the gimbal, with the DJI Ronin S, you have to download an app and register and log in to activate the gimbal. But the Moza Air 2, you can just turn it on and get started. In fact, through all my testing so far, I haven't even needed to download the app. So solid point to Moza there, because I don't want to have to download an app to use a tool. Now, even though the Moza Air 2 has stronger motors, the DJI Ronin S has a smoother time going into an inverted stance. And what I mean by that is, so if you're going forward and down, they both perform just fine. But if you go to the right and try to invert that way, the Ronin S does it just fine, but the Moza Air 2 hangs up and the motors disengage. So point to Ronin for that. Now they both have an Inception mode, but what I've noticed with the Ronin S is at 2 points during the Inception roll, like when the vertical weight is transferred across the roll, it clicks. I don't know how to describe it. Like a little bit of the weight shifts and then like there's a moment of looseness on the Ronin S. That's probably not a thing. But there's just a moment where the vertical weight shifts from top to bottom on both the twice. So twice on every 360 roll, you get a click and a click. So I can't get a super smooth Inception roll with the DJI Ronin S. And you have to use the app to actually set up one of the modes to be an Inception mode. But with the Moza Air 2, it's got an Inception mode built in. You just tap one of the buttons twice, and then it goes into Inception mode. And not only do you not have to hold down the thumbstick to get it to go just as smooth as you want, you can actually rotate the dial to automatically rotate at a consistent speed. So all you have to do is focus on holding the gimbal for your Inception shot. Now the Inception shot, because of gimbals, is getting a little bit overplayed, but it can still be artistic and tasteful, and being able to get it done in one take is so much easier than having to fudge with it. Also, I don't have that weird vertical weight shifting problem. I get a super smooth Inception every time that I've tried it with the Moza Air 2. So point to Moza for Inception. And one of the most frustrating things about using equipment is batteries. Now the DJI Ronin S has completely solved that problem because their battery is built into the handle, it lasts for 12 hours, and it's rechargeable via USB. So that's perfect for me. One of my biggest pain points with the Moza Air 2 is how they've set up their batteries. So to release the battery hatch, which is on the handle, I have to use like a key or a screwdriver to like click it down because you have to use so much force in such a small little place. My fingernails, they won't do it. I need to use like a screwdriver. And then once you have the thing open, you've got to use a screwdriver to pry the batteries out because they're seated so hard in there. And I think that's like a huge pain in the ass. Now, someone who's taking this gimbal on, a long shoot for several days at a time, and is not gonna have access to, power or anything like that, they might actually prefer the Moza Air 2 because one, after you've charged the batteries, they can last for up to 16 hours. And you can have extra sets of batteries with you, and it's a lot cheaper than buying an extra handle for the Ronin S. Although I prefer the Ronin S because I would never not have the opportunity to charge my gimbal, and I would never use it for more than 12 hours. Some other filmmakers might actually prefer the Moza Air 2, so I'm not giving a point to anyone here. Something that I really appreciate about the Moza Air 2 is it has an extra mounting point on the front, so you don't need to attach extra cages and weird handles to your gimbal just so you can mount the monitor. Moza went ahead and thought of that and put one right in front of the gimbal, and so they get a huge point for that. I really like that there is a quick release plate lock and then a quick release plate on top of that for the Moza Air 2, because every time you remove your camera off of the Ronin S, you need to make sure you're seated just perfectly, so kind of rebalance it every time you remove and put your camera back on, unless you do what I do and use an additional quick release plate on top of that. Because I use the same quick release plate for all of my systems, which is, I just use the Manfrotto RC232 system, so I don't have to worry about that. But if you don't, then every time you put your camera back onto the DJI Ronin S, then you'll need to make sure it's seated just perfectly, and you don't have that problem with the Moza Air 2. So, point goes to Moza. Now Moza Air 2, it's got this whole power system to where you can power like a monitor, your camera, and there's like all kinds of power out ports. They definitely thought ahead with this, so Moza gets a huge point for adding all those additional power features and ports. Now, I use the X-T3, and while DJI Ronin S now supports the X-T3 and the Moza Air 2, you can get a cable that works with the X-T3. I don't personally use the start-stop features or the power features of the Moza Air 2. They're nice to haves, they are available, but I just put fresh batteries in my camera and turn it on manually. I don't actually ever use the gimbal start, stop, record features. A couple other interesting things that the Moza Air 2 has is it's got like a nice little rubber protector, so when you're carrying it around, look at this. So this is the Ronin. You probably recognize that sound, because the gimbal, the arm right here always hits the base of it every time you carry it around and it moves around. It's really annoying. But the Moza Air 2, it's got like this nice little rubber bounce plate, so it's not so loud and annoying. And the Moza Air 2 has a nice little axis lock here. So, whoop. What I did to carry the Ronin S around and store it is I got one of these like big rubber twist tie things you can get from like Home Depot. And then I've been like tying it around and just like attaching it to the focus wheel here. So it's like kind of less annoying. It like sort of stays in place. I don't know, the axis lock is super appreciated by the Moza. Something else I really like about the DJI Ronin S is in their app, they've got this motion control mode where you can program different waypoints. And Josh Yo did a crazy video on that. I'll put a card link somewhere. And Moza does not have that. Oh, and because I don't actually connect my camera to the gimbal in any way, this focus wheel becomes completely useless. And if your camera isn't supported either, it'll still be useless. On the DJI Ronin S, that is. On the Moza Air 2, you can configure the previously useless focus wheel to control roll. So it makes the focus wheel not so useless, which is kind of nice. Something else I really like about the Moza Air 2 is how easy it is to disable different axes. So one tap enables and disables the pan axis. 2 taps enables and disables the roll axis. And 3 taps will enable and disable the tilt axis. So say you've got just the pan and tilt enabled, the jog wheel here, you can just swoop it down to 1 and then it will basically be super duper slow. You can speed it up a little bit, all the way up to 100% really fast if you want it to be like super responsive right away. So say you're chasing someone and you want it to be super level, swoop it down to about 1. So no matter what you do here, your camera's gonna stay fairly stable. But you see you're coming up to a turn, quickly jog it up to 100. Then you can follow them and then jog it back down to 1 when you're finished with your turn. You can always override the 1 with a joystick here. Once you get used to the buttons, it's so easy to configure it to do what you want it to do really quickly, whereas with the Ronin, you've got to load up the app and then spend some time setting it up to make sure that you have 3 different modes to do all the movements that you need to do before you do your shoot. So I rode a hoverboard for a lot of these shots. Don't judge me, it works. And it helps prevent vertical movements, which you're gonna get with a handheld gimbal. Now, the DJI Ronin S is, of course, a little bit heavier, so if you're running around with the gimbal, you're gonna see less vertical movements or vibrations because that's the way physics works. The Moza Air 2 is a little bit lighter. But then again, you're gonna be fatigued less quickly with the Moza Air 2 because the DJI Ronin S, of course, is heavier, and that's the way your body works. It's really just gonna come down to practice with the gimbal. Whichever one you have, you don't need to sell it to buy the other one. You just really need to practice and work with your gimbal in order to get the best footage. Even between the two gimbals, I found myself getting better at shots like this one I took with the Moza Air 2 first, and then because I had already practiced it and I tried to do it with the Ronin S, it came out better. Not because the gimbal's better, but because I had practiced that shot already. And I've owned the Ronin S longer, so I'm a little bit more familiar with it. I have more B-roll practice with it. Now, like this shot is really smooth on the Ronin S, and then I did it with the Moza Air 2, and of course you see those a little bit of vertical movements because it weighs less. And then again with the Ronin S, nice and smooth, and the Moza is a little bit bumpy because it's just lighter. But then because it's lighter, I'm also able to try more ambitious movements like this one, which didn't even occur to me with the heavy Ronin S. So if I had to boil it down to a few key points about both these gimbals, I would say that the Moza Air 2, it's really easy to pick it up out of the box and just start to make stuff. The menus are a little bit confusing at first, but after about 20 minutes of looking through some tutorials and understanding what all the different letters mean, then you should be good to go on the Moza Air 2. But with the DJI Ronin S, you have to download the app, you have to register, but it's more comfortable in the hand. So it's like the Moza Air 2 was built for out-of-the-box functionality, but the DJI Ronin S was built for user experience. I mean, if you're just a prosumer, then the DJI Ronin S is probably gonna be a better pick because it feels better in the hand, it's easier to charge the batteries and just plug it in at the end of the day into your computer. But if you're a professional and you're looking for a really useful tool you can use for creating, more cinematic content and you wanna take it out on trips, I'd recommend the Moza Air 2 because it's built with a professional in mind. So that's my take on it. I think they're both excellent tools. They both make super smooth footage. Either of them is gonna take a lot of practice to get really good with. You're not just gonna be able to take it out of the box and be a pro. Whatever gimbal you do get, you're gonna need to learn how to use, and there is some technique involved. So get out there and practice. Whatever gimbal you do end up getting or you already have, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you wanna pick up a gimbal, I put links to them in the description of this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.